Sure, I gotta get it. What's about it? Oops. Oh, well, let it drop. Get in there, and then she wants some beans, some... Been kind of a mess here tonight. Let's see. Oh, some eggs. That's right. See, all I need to make this picture complete is an unwrapped pound of butter to put in my hat. Or to put it another way, ladies and gentlemen, just how would we operate if we didn't have paper bags, wrappers, boxes, cartons, packages? In a word, containers. You know, most of us don't even think about it anymore. We just go down the line at the supermarket, buying all these items and many, many others just like them as we go down the line there that are already packaged for us. Now, we have handy 6-bottle packs, a package of frozen strawberries, a box of candy, a carton of tomatoes, prepared cereal in the big family size, and the economy package of 48 bags of tea. The catalog of containers can be carried on almost indefinitely, and the story of containers is perhaps bigger than you think. Containers have not only revolutionized the manufacturing, handling, transportation, and distribution of goods in a functional way, they have become one of the most effective salesmen in the American economy. And that's our success story for tonight.
Success Story, an on-the-spot live telecast brought to you each week from somewhere in the Pacific Northwest as a public service by Richfield, makers of new Richfield boron gasoline, Richfield Rich Heat heating oils, and a complete line of years ahead petroleum products. Tonight, our Success Story cameras visit Container Corporation of America at their new folding carton plant in Renton, just 10 miles south of Seattle in the Duwamish Waterway area. Here, in park-like surroundings, with building and landscaping designed accordingly, Container Corporation of America points the way to a new type of industrial area for Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. This is one of Container Corporation's 77 plants scattered in all major cities in the United States, one of 3 plants in the Puget Sound area. These plants and others throughout America and the world manufacture pulp and paper stock, paperboard, and finished products. Flat stock or boxboard comes here to the Renton plant from Los Angeles, Santa Clara, and neighboring Tacoma. Rolls and bales of processed fibers that came originally from the timberlands of the West. Container Corporation of America begins with the logs of the forest, plus some other natural fibers such as straw. But our visit tonight is focused on a plant that makes one class of finished product, folding cartons. And here is your Success Story reporter with Container Corporation's General Manager at Renton, Mr. W.P. Peters.
Well, Mr. Peters, before we start, I'd like to tell you what a beautiful plant you have here. Of course, you probably know that.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. We're very proud of the plant. We spent many hours designing it and trying to make it an efficient plant. And we also did our best to make it attractive for our employees and for the community.
How many acres do you have here?
We have 48 acres of land, but we're only using 10 at the present. We deal with confidence in the Northwest and our future here, so we got plenty of land so we can expand.
What are all these cartons and containers used for?
Well, Scott, folding cartons are used throughout the world to transport small articles to the ultimate consumer. If you just stop and think for a moment about the supermarket or the drugstore or department store, you can picture all of the folding cartons that are used in these many places. They're used for cereal, soap, facial tissues, ice cream, many, many different uses.
Well, I think we all have a pretty general idea what a folding carton is, but specifically, what is a folding carton?
The word folding refers to the fact that the carton is folded flat at the time we ship it out. This means that it takes up a lot less room when it's stored and when it's shipped. Now, you could contrast that with, say, a box of facial tissue or other facial powder like you get your wife, or a box of fine candy. They come in set-up boxes and take up a lot more room.
I see. Now, this is one of those folding cartons you have?
Yes, this is one of hundreds of different types of folding cartons that we make in our many plants.
I see. Now, what are some of the processes involved in getting a beautiful carton like this Scotty's we have here?
Oh, very briefly, we start out with flat stock, that is sheets of paperboard, and we print it. Then we cut the cartons out of these sheets, and then we send it down to the finishing department. The finishing department will glue the cartons or wax them or even add cellophane windows to them.
I see. And this is one of the many presses that you have.
Yes, this is one of 6 presses that we have here. Many people don't realize that we are the world's largest commercial printing company.
Well, we know that there's some preliminary work that goes into this before it comes out like this.
Well, that's right, and that's just as important as the production work. We're very anxious to make sure that the structure is just right so that it will protect the contents and that we have a good saleable carton, so we're concerned with the graphic design.
Well, at this time, Mr. Peters, let's start right at the beginning and see how a selling carton is born, shall we?
Very good.
Here, ladies and gentlemen, is designer Harry Keller, an artist with a problem that no artist faced 100 years ago. Not that he isn't concerned with age-old problems of color and composition. He definitely is. But he is also asking such questions as, will the eye come to rest on the brand name, or will it wander off to the next shelf? Is this design calculated to make the shopper stop and reach, or walk on down the line? Can the label be read at a glance and at an angle? Artist Harry Keller has at his disposal more facts to help him answer these questions than any artist ever had, even 20 years ago. What's more, Container Corporation of America has highly developed research facilities to answer new questions and to double-check. There are other questions of design that must be answered too. Here at Container Corporation of America, there is a carton encyclopedia containing 500 different styles of cartons. This is just one volume of the complete set. Of course, endless variations on these styles are possible. It is the structural designer's job to create the right carton for each job. From the first drawing, he'll make up a sample. His knowledge of cartons and what this particular carton is supposed to do are already coming into play. But before this design will go into production, the sample must pass every test, and there'll be a trial run in production. When the structural design has passed the test, a production die will be made to pattern. Here, wood blocks of specially selected hardwood plywood are cut and put together with metal strips in between. These are cutting blades and scoring edges laid in here to the precise pattern. A highly skilled job requiring 4 years of apprenticeship to become a journeyman. With today's high-speed production lines, cartons must be precision-made and uniform.
Friends, I'd like to have you meet the head die maker here at Container Corporation, Mr. Gordon Howell. And Gordon, I'd like to tell you that we have seen many dies in our tours on the success story, but I don't think we've ever seen dies such as we've seen here today. Now tell me, how long do you think it takes to make one of these die?
Well, it takes approximately 25 to 30 hours in order to make a die of this type.
It's quite exacting work, isn't it?
It is exacting work, yes, sir.
Well, I imagine that you begin with a drawing such as this we have right here.
Yes, we start with a drawing that shows our dimensions and the curves and so on and so forth that are to be used in the die.
And then what?
Well, these are some of the rough cut blocks that we use out of hard birch. Then after we rough cut these, then we go into our regular dimension work of making our production die. This is a production die that isn't quite completed as yet, showing the parts where they fit in. And the next die that we have here is the master die of this particular production die. Now that die is completed. It has had the scoring rule and also the knives inserted into the die.
Well, now we have the scoring and the cutting knives in place. Where do we go from there?
Well, then the die has to be corked before it is able to be put on the presses.
Now, what do you mean corked?
Well, this is a cork that is used that we glue along the surface of the cutting knives to keep the paper from sticking to the knives under an impression. These act as a spring.
I see. The knives just press right down, the press presses right down over that cork and impress over the knives.
That's right.
And then, of course, the cork itself forces the paper off the knives so they don't stick.
That's exactly right, sir.
Uh-huh. And this is a little sample that you've already cut off there.
That's a die cut from the master die.
I see. Well, we'll get a chance to see this die in operation in just a few moments, friends, but first let's go up on the production floor and take the operation in order, shall we?
This plant operates on what is known as the straight line system. The paper stock we've already seen comes in at one end of the building, proceeds to the printing press, and then on in a direct line through various manufacturing steps to finished cartons at the opposite end of the plant. At this point, you would think that you were in a printing company, as well you might. The press we are watching in operation now is one of 6 flatbed printing presses in this Renton plant. They can print from 1 to 3 colors at a time. Fine printing is synonymous with modern packaging. An effective combination of copy, art, and color is what gives a package eye appeal and individuality. These presses provide the mechanical means of transferring to paperboard the most vigorous as well as the most delicate details of the designer's idea. Although this is an industrial job, expert craftsmen and precision equipment turn out work comparable in every way to the work of presses that print books and magazines. The artist's original concept has been reproduced for printing in the form of an electroplate, and inks selected for the job with full consideration for the characteristics of the paper stock being used. To be sure that color reproduction remains uniform, strips are taken from the press every hour, and color is checked 2 ways. First, visually, and then by precise scientific measurement of the optical density of the ink. These 2 tests, taken together, assure color uniformity. This, plus clarity and perfect register, are characteristic of fine packaging. Out of the printing presses, the sheets are allowed to dry before moving on down the line to a cutting press. At that point, we return to the business of structural design and packaging engineering. Here is the drawing of the carton in production on the line, and here the original sample of the carton. This preliminary work of the package engineer has been transferred to a cutting die. The die has been moved to the press, the painstaking precision work of making up the press completed. Now the press is ready to go. Here is one of the most important and most delicate steps in the manufacturing process. The knives cut the main outline of the carton, also make necessary cuts for slots and, in some cases, windows in the package. The dull lower set rules crease the paperboard so it will bend easily when the carton is set up and formed. Here's how the carton looks as it comes from the cutting press. Not yet stripped, but cut and creased. As soon as the waste is stripped off, it's ready to go to finishing, or in this case, ready for shipping direct to the manufacturer's packaging machines. An individual custom-built job, produced, however, in tremendous mass production quantity.
Friends, I'd like to have you meet Bill Robb. He's the general foreman here at Container Corporation. And Bill, what a tremendous production job he has. Bill, how many cartons would you say come off this machine here in a day's time?
This machine is running from 130 to 150,000 of these cartons each shift.
Boy, that's a lot of cartons. You have 6 presses just like this, plus 6 printing presses. On a full capacity job, what would be the capacity for the day's time?
It would vary depending upon the size of the carton and the number per sheet, but these 6 cutting presses can turn out 1 million cartons a day.
Wow, that is a lot of cartons. The next step, as I understand, is stripping.
After the carton has been cut in this press, it's taken to this stripping area here, and we knock the trim off with an air hammer.
Boy, it just peels it right off, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. We have to be very careful to not have any damage to these cartons, as they're machine formed and filled at our customer's plant. If they're bent or torn, they won't run on his equipment.
I see. Look at that. It just sort of explodes right out of there. You might have noticed, friends, if you were watching the success story a few weeks ago, these cut-right cartons, as well as the Scotty cartons that we'll be showing you a few seconds later, and also that you'll find Container Corporation cartons probably all over the Northwest. Thank you, Bill, very much. And now let's get back to Martin Tobin, shall we?
You are viewing Success Story, a series of on-the-spot live telecasts originating each week somewhere in the Pacific Northwest and brought to you by Richfield. Tonight's Success Story is originating from the Renton plant of Container Corporation of America, located at 7000 South 143rd Street. A sparkling new plant south of Seattle, one of 3 Container Corporation plants in the Puget Sound area. This particular plant manufactures folding cartons for scores of other manufacturers in our region. We have already mentioned wood fibers from the forests of America as a basic raw material in the production of paperboard. It is also interesting to note that Container Corporation reclaims what would otherwise be useless and thereby conserving wood. Waste from their own plant is, needless to say, conserved. Here, drawn up by suction, it is carried to a baling machine. Salvaged fibers that will be shipped to Container Corporation's paper mills for reuse. Waste paperboard is separated according to type, since fiber mixtures vary widely to meet a wide variety of special requirements in the packaging field. All this will be reduced to pulp again and remixed, perhaps to come back to Renton another day or another job.
Friends, I'd like to have you meet the plant manager here at Container Corporation, Mr. Cliff Fox. Now, Cliff, we know that you have many presses here. This is probably the fastest one, isn't it?
This is called a Mercury Blanker, Scott. It's not only the newest press we have, but it's also by far the fastest.
I might mention right now it is shut down. They're just, as a matter of fact, they're getting the paper ready to roll, and they're splicing it at this time. If this machine were working at this time, Cliff, well, take us through the operation. Will you do that, please?
Well, we run the paperboard here off of rolls, Scott, and whereas the other presses use individual sheets. First thing we have to do, of course, is take the curl out of the sheet because it's been tightly wound in a roll.
That's why we use all these rolls right here.
That's right. That's the first section. Next section is the metering section where we feed up the exact amount of stock that we need for the particular form we're running. Following that, we go into this section here is the actual cutting press itself.
That little opening in there about 2 inches wide there, that's where the press is in.
That's right. That works similar to a punch press. You might say we're actually stamping out the cartons here. And the blanks travel onward, and they're still attached to one another by a little piece of scrap and internal trim, which we remove with a series of pins on a cylinder which spear the scrap and bring it on through the bottom into a combing device which goes on the end of the suction section.
I see. And now we come out to the conveyor belt itself.
The cartons are delivered here, ready for shipment.
Now this is, these are actually the cartons. Could I take one of these here?
Surely.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's flat. How do you fold those up?
This is a little 1 pound frozen food carton. That's such as you buy in the retail stores. Contains a pound of carrots or peas.
Yes, sir. Well, I certainly recognize that part of it right there. Thank you very much, Cliff. Now, friends, let's get back to the finishing department, shall we? Yes.
Now we come to the far end of the line and the final production steps. Here machines take the blanks and fold and glue them, often at very high speeds. This one, for example. Now, let's slow it down momentarily to get a better idea of the job that's done. When you consider the extremely wide variety of cartons in size, shape, and design, it seems remarkable that the machines could be set up to do so many different jobs. Here again, each is a custom job, calling for the greatest precision, and yet each job must be turned out on a mass production basis. 5 machines here glue and fold cartons of all kinds and descriptions. Cartons finished and counted automatically into equal lots for packing and shipment. Also, at the finishing end of the line is the cold waxer. Here, both sides of cartons are coated with wax, finishing cartons that are designed for such moist food products as butter and frozen foods. In addition to acting as a barrier to loss of moisture from the product, the wax protects the paperboard and the printing from the effects of moisture. The plant also has a hot waxing machine and a cellophane machine for applying transparent windows to cartons that let you see the product inside. Another important merchandising asset created by modern packaging methods. Although folding cartons are the product of this Renton plant, the folding cartons are of great importance to the high-speed filling and closing operations demanded by mass production. No story of Container Corporation of America would be complete without mentioning shipping cases, fiber cases, flexible packages, fiber cans, and other specialties. Here are just a few of the fiber cans produced in Container Corporation's fiber can plants. This has proved to be an ideal container for shipping books. If you saw a success story on the post office in Seattle 3 weeks ago, you'll know why this container is valuable. Fiber-bodied cans with metal tops and bottoms stand up to plenty of hard usage. Among specialties of the company are display setups and premiums of paperboard, such as the so-called slotties, effective merchandising aids for many different manufacturers, solving widely varied problems through creative design and research is the rule at Container Corporation.
Well, friends, tonight we've seen some very skilled craftsmen and some remarkable machines, but there's much more to the story than that. I think the philosophy behind the company itself is just as fascinating as the production itself. Mr. Peters, how do you feel about that?
Well, Scott, Walter Papke, who's chairman of the board of our company, has some very firm convictions about the importance of design and research in our business, and I feel that as a result of these convictions, we've done some rather unusual and interesting things. For example, take the matter of color. It doesn't matter whether you're manufacturing folding cartons or airplanes or refrigerators. Somehow or another, you have to get involved in using color. And one of the problems is how to talk about it. How do I tell you what color I want, for example, on the upholstery if I was ordering material from you for a car? And we didn't feel that there was any adequate system on the market for this, so we have written a color harmony manual. We have one here, and as you can see, it's composed of a number of color chips. Actually, there's over 1,000 different color chips in this. And each of these chips are coded so that if you had one of these manuals and you were in one part of the country and I was in another part, we could talk about color in a specific way.
Actually, you have many different companies using this manual, haven't you?
Yes, there are several thousand companies all over the world that use this. Matter of fact, Boeing Airplane Company right here in town uses it for the interiors of their airplanes.
Container Corporation maintains a continuous research program for design and packaging, don't they?
Yes, we do. We have quite an elaborate research laboratory in Chicago. And in this lab, we have a number of instruments that we use for helping us to judge whether a carton design will sell or not. We have, for example, instruments that measure your eyes to see what they see first when they look at a carton. We have angle meters that can tell us whether or not you can see a carton out of the corner of your eye. We have all sorts of instruments and methods of testing to see whether a carton actually will result in a good consumer reaction on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. I think we might take just a moment to talk about something I think is quite unusual in the container field, and that's the book that your company has written.
Well, we've written a number of books, Scott. This is just one of them, but we feel that this World Geographic Atlas is a rather interesting book. Actually, one of the most interesting parts about it is the fact that we went to so much trouble to get the best maps we could of Europe. For example, we had the maps printed in Italy for the European countries. And this atlas has given a lot of people a lot of pleasure because it is such an unusual thing.
I can see that. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Peters.
Well, I certainly want to thank you.
Perhaps one good example of the philosophy of Container Corporation of America is the widely discussed Great Ideas of Western Man series of advertisements. John Stuart Mill on the training of men. Men are men before they are lawyers or physicians or manufacturers. And if you make them capable and sensible men, they will make themselves capable and sensible lawyers and physicians. Goethe on ignorance. There is nothing more frightful than ignorance in action. The series has run in leading periodicals for several years, always combining great ideas with exceptional design. And so perhaps a basic reason behind the success of the busy presses here at the Renton plant and behind the scores of other plants throughout America and in Germany, Mexico, Colombia, and Venezuela, perhaps the whole success story is really based on ideas. It is certain, at any rate, that here is one of the great examples of creative American enterprise at work, never satisfied with existing methods or existing knowledge, but always calling freely on all the experience of the past. It is also certain that as sure as mass production and mass distribution are vital links in our rising living standards, modern packaging methods have played no small role in the economic development of the past generation. During some 30 years, Container Corporation of America have not only manufactured containers, they have been in the forefront with new ideas and new designs. Today, the average American family uses about 2,000 containers a year. It's very unlikely that you go through a single day of your life without coming into contact with a dozen or more packages made by Container Corporation of America. While that surprising figure of 2,000 containers per year per family is not a precise measurement of living standards, the use of paper and paper products is a clear reflection of those standards. We in the United States consume each year over 400 pounds of paper and paperboard per person. 6% of the world's population uses nearly 60% of the world's paper production. And we have the highest standard of living of any people in all history.
Well, friends, tonight we've visited the Container Corporation of America's brand new folding carton plant in Renton. And all of us on Richfield would like to tell you, Mr. Peters, how much we've enjoyed it, and we'd like to thank you and all your fine personnel for the very fine visitation that we've had.
Well, we've enjoyed it too, Scott, and we want to thank you and those from Richfield for telling our story for us. We're very grateful for it.
It's certainly been our pleasure. And friends, till next week, see you then. Bye.
Success Story, an on-the-spot report, is brought to you by Richfield, makers of new Richfield Boron gasoline, Richfield Rich Heat heating oils, and a complete line of years ahead petroleum products. Next week at the same time, we'll bring you another live origination of Success Story with Scott Easton when our cameras take you for a behind-the-scenes visit to King's Garden for our Christmas Eve show of Christmas carols. Until then, this is Martin Tobin saying good night from Richfield.
Richfield has brought you Success Story and invites you to join us again next Tuesday at 7 p.m. This is King Television,